welcome back, you guys. This is Rihanna May, aka Miss Devious, and today I'm going to be reacting to the topic of do we actually want vulnerable men? I kind of grew up as a tomboy. I wasn't really girly until my mid 20s, and I hung out with a lot of guys, platonic male friends, and I feel like their opinions and their mindsets shaped my perspective somewhat, not entirely obviously, but did shape my perspective and my ability to kind of see both sides. This is a topic I feel like it's super important to me because I know that the male friends I've had, I feel like their vulnerability and their mental health and their well-being in general is kind of a topic that's swept aside. I don't know if you guys are new to the channel or if you've seen other things. I do like a guy's guy, but that being said, I also feel like there are certain things that men don't even get catered to on a mental, emotional level because it's not even considered. So I'm interested to see what these guys have to say. Let's get into it.
For a long time. I think mostly because for me it's been a point that's almost made me angry when it comes to dating. I think as a society we often tell young men and men in general that they need to be more emotionally vulnerable, that they need to be comfortable with expressing themselves. And what I've come to learn through my dating experiences is that when I've taken the time to be emotionally vulnerable with the women I've been seeing romantically, I've seen it backfire. I've seen times where I've shared what I am feeling with women and I've seen them get less attracted to me. And so I decided to interview some men to see if they had a similar experience.
Ben pas plus jamais, mais je me mettrai jamais vulnérable devant une femme, parce que les femmes ne veulent pas avoir ça.
Sure.
Yeah?
I think so.
I get it. Like, I'm not that type of person, but I get it. Because oftentimes we don't think we are like this as women, but we have very old school ways of thinking about how men should be.
Yes, but I don't want my man to be crying, you know, I mean, I cry every 28 days of my cycle. I don't want my man to be crying every 28.
With the right people, yeah. Always worth it. Even if it ends in heartbreak,
Yes.
the journey is worth it.
I
Always.
love that. Yes.
Often, we have this.
But as a woman also, I find that like if I let out all my weird quirky personality when I'm super goofy or if I'm really emotionally open and super transparent, it almost does the same thing. Like guys kind of freak out. So I think maybe it goes both ways on this topic.
But always.
Yes. Yeah. Often, we have this societal pressure of being a man, so I need to toughen up. I need to show and command respect, and then willy-nilly, someone will decide, well, in this situation, you should have been softer,
Right.
calmer, and better.
Totally.
And then the pendulum goes the other way, and then you've told, well, now you're too soft.
Right.
So I constantly.
They're so confusing. Like the messages sent is, I feel like the poor guys have it rough right now.
Pendulum goes the other way, and then you've told, well, now you're too soft. So I constantly, I am myself, even currently, when I meet women, I'm not sure
Which way to
foot
go.
to dance right now. Yeah.
Women are being taught to deal with a man's anger, a man's desire, a man's sexuality. We're being taught how to handle those situations, but we're never being taught how to handle a man being sad or a man being hurt or a man being disappointed.
So we're used to like men like
I agree with that.
keeping it together.
Well,
We are used to men keeping it together.
I think that obviously it's societal conditioning.
Okay.
So when you have this perception of what a man is supposed to be sacrificing, you use that in our video that we did together on my channel as a collab. But you talked about the sacrifice where men have to sacrifice their time, their bodies, their safety, and a lot of times their emotions. Like
Right.
they are the rock, the emotional rock of the family. And so a lot of people grew up never seeing their dad cry or their grandfather, whoever was the
Like, and how often do you like ask the men in your life, like, are you good? Do you feel okay? Do you need to talk it out?
present male force in their life, and so they associate that with strength, with being a pillar of strength. And so I think when you see a man be vulnerable, even though you acknowledge that it's healthy for them, it
Right.
also starts to create this seed of doubt in your mind, because all that you've been conditioned to believe about masculinity says that this pillar is not supposed to bend, break, or sob. I mean, one of my favorite philosophers says this, that what we often tend to do in relationships is that we use vulnerability at the wrong times.
Right.
So I'm vulnerable at your expense versus I'm vulnerable to be informative. So an example of that is, hey, just so you know, when I get around bright lights, I start biting people. I'm informing you in a vulnerable sense. I'm informing you before the thing has happened. Versus the light went on, I started biting you. Now you're hurt, and now I'm trying to explain to you why it is that I bite with bright lights.
Okay.
So that happens a lot, where people have to then be emotionally available for somebody who has harmed them.
Okay.
You're expecting empathy from somebody whom is your attacker.
Less
Right.
interested. No, I love someone who's like open and is sharing their life stories.
Depends on.
If I'm interested in the person and I really want to date them, or if I really want to be like friends with this person, absolutely, I'm interested in all of it.
No, I love someone who's like open and is sharing their life stories.
Depends on what you're opening up about. If that's something like, say it could be also a sore spot for that person to deal with.
If you engage in a relationship and it's starting, they may not be at a point yet where they're ready to hear some information about your personal life. And that doesn't mean that they're wrong. There are certain aspects of yourself that you have to gradually let people in incrementally.
Right.
Some people
I
are not
agree
ready
with
to hear
that.
about it.
Yes.
There's like a speed limit on certain things. Like, it's possible to overshare or to share too soon. And I think that is like a nail in the coffin for a lot of friendships or relationships.
There are certain aspects of yourself that you have to gradually let people in incrementally. Some people are not ready to hear about
Yes.
certain experiences. So I respect that. For me personally, I will share with someone when I truly feel ready. I had society put pressure on me, telling me I needed to be more emotional, and I hated it. But I decided to do it because I was told that was the right thing. And what I found personally is I felt like I was violating myself and my own boundaries in order to appease what the world thought I should do. Now, I'm very patient with it. And if a girl kind of pressures me, I'll be like, I'll get to it when I'm ready. Just know I'm not there yet. And that works better for me.
I think I'm more emotionally available and willing to explain and talk about my stories and stuff if I feel like the other person is genuinely interested. Like, if they actually feel like they want to know the stuff, then yes. Otherwise, I'm not going to bore you with my bullshit.
Get to it when I'm ready. Just know I'm not there yet. And that works better for me.
We all love it when our men are vulnerable and show emotion, right? Well, according to singer Rihanna, it depends what they're crying about. That's right. Rihanna posted this meme to Instagram.
It's my girl.
If we get together and your ex died and you cry, you're single. Yes, Rihanna. Yes, Riri.
That's my girl.
Could you imagine somebody says and you start weeping? I'm sorry, I think that there is a time and a place for everything, and I think if you have such uncontrollable emotion when it comes to that person that you can't even control it to not do it in front of your current spouse, that you might still have some type of feelings for that person. 100,000% I agree. So angry, so mad.
100,000%. So if your ex... Wait a minute. Does that mean if your ex dies, you can't cry? I don't know how I feel about that.
Okay, hold on. Hold on.
Yeah, is he gonna say what I just said? He said no.
So do you want...
Freddie cry. One was the passing of his father, and then the other before that was the day we got married. Yeah. So if I were to see this man next to me cry over another...
Oh my gosh!
I've often heard women say, I got to see him cry on her wedding day or
No.
this, and it made the woman feel special. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I often feel like men's emotions are almost fetishized
Yes.
by women in the sense that, like, oh, he let me see that.
Like they want to like show it off and parade it around like a badge that they got him to do this thing. I kind of feel that a little bit. I would agree. And this is only a generalization. Of course, this doesn't mean every single person everywhere, obviously, right?
Fetishized
Yes.
by women in the sense that, like, oh, he let me see that. I feel special.
Yes.
He's only letting me see that.
Right.
And so what you realize is that there isn't that much space for men's emotions in those relationships. And it's crazy. I see a lot of older couples, and you'll realize in a lot of older couples, the man never speaks. The man rarely says anything, and the woman takes up all the emotional space in the conversation.
That's horrible.
No.
The women take up all the emotional space, and the guys have just kind of understood that their emotions are secondary, and so they keep it to themselves.
They're like, whatever she says, ask the wife.
All the emotional space, and the guys have just kind of understood that their emotions are secondary, and so they keep it to themselves. I'm not saying this to criticize women. This is like me trying to tackle this issue because I'm
Totally.
trying to understand
I get it.
what I'm going through and what society's telling me and the reality I keep facing and what a lot of men keep facing. And so what you realize is that there isn't that much space for men's emotions in those relationships. It's more so about the woman getting to feel special.
Right. And like you can only be emotional and vulnerable when I say that it fits into this like man image in my head that I've created for you. I've created this man image, and you can only be sad and sweet when it's our wedding day, when your dad dies, or our child is born, right? Because that's when it's okay to be emotional or be vulnerable or be all these other key like personality things I think you should be.
Space for men's emotions in those relationships. It's more so about the woman getting to feel special. And so it almost devalues the male experience, and it perverts it.
I never
That's
thought of it that way.
Something I've experienced before, for sure.
Well, I think it probably would exist on both ends, right? Like
Right.
there's going to be times that we all enjoy or delight in someone's pain if it's directed in a way that makes us feel better about ourselves. For example, I went to go see The Joker. And in The Joker, I sat beside a Joker wannabe. And this is a joke now, but I was bawling in the theaters. Because this guy, I live in America, and he had a black backpack that he sat on his lap. He stared at me for the bulk of the film. He said to me at one point, I just want to see how you're going to react to this point. He knew the words to the movie before the words would come out.
Oh,
he
that's
sang
weird.
along to the songs. He would say the punchline before the Joker said the punchline.
Wait, you stayed for the whole movie?
Because I felt like if I got up, because even my husband was sitting beside me, and Jared was like, do you need me to move? But I'm like, I felt I was responsible for the livelihood of the theater. I felt like if this dude did not feel empathy for me, I felt like if he didn't feel empathy for me and didn't see me cry, that he would blow everybody out.
So I felt like this in public settings before. I had to take a bus before because there was no parking at my job, blah, 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 blah. Whatever. I have literally felt like the livelihood of the entire bus and the trip and the driver who's in charge of all of our lives was like in my hands, because there would either be a crazy creep or a drug addict or something happening that I felt like I was sacrificing myself or doing the role that was needed at that time. Crazy. I like this girl.
I felt like if he didn't feel empathy for me and didn't see me cry, that he would blow everybody out.
Sounds crazy, but it's true.
Let me tell you, it was one of those theaters with the reclining chairs. If I sat my chair up, he would sit his chair up.
Oh my God.
Okay. We
Creepy.
just have to take a second note. I think you were dealing with a psychopath.
Yes, for
And
sure.
that's not indicative of the male regular experience. Like, it's not like if I shed a tear and a girl's like collecting them. I'm like, see, women got problems. Like that's,
He's like, this is a bad example. I don't know where you're going with this.
I shed a tear and a girl's like collecting them. I'm like, see, women got problems. Like that's, you dealt with something.
No, what I'm saying is, aside from that though, we get out of the theater, and my partner and then his brother was there as well too. Like he embraced me, and then he was just like in that moment getting to protect, right? Like getting to be that. So I think that in those moments, and that, oh, she feels safe around me, or like we're having this moment, I think that that's when a woman's emotions is seen as like sexy.
Okay, I've never looked at a woman who's vulnerable or in a weakened state that I want to hug. I was like, I just want to make sure she's okay. That's literally one. And I never thought like.
Our brains work so different, but we think that too. Like maybe if he sees me in this sick when I'm hurt with my broken heel, stranded. Maybe he'll like, it'll be a super feminine, I don't know. That's weird.
When states I want to hug, I was like, I just want to make sure she's okay. That's literally one. And I never thought like, this is attractive or I feel special right now. It was just like, I want to make sure you're good. That's what, but maybe some men think that way.
I think that if a man can be in a
They probably
protective position and they can feel like they're shielding you, and then that's an emotional release from you, there is some pleasure in that because they feel like they're getting to in turn give you support and protection.
Like they like to kill the spider because they know that you're too scared to, right? Okay, I got it. I like this. I like it.
So I'm just saying that might be an example
Okay, cool.
I think the example I first gave was spot on, but you maybe go to a second one, which...
The one about the kid?
Yes, that's spot on one.
So you repeat that one again?
When a child cries because they're going to school and have to be separated from their mother, and as much as you don't want your child to feel sad, there is something pleasurable about their sadness because you know
they just love.
They love you so much.
Right.
So in that sense, like I said,
I guess that's a good example. Yeah,
That's a really good one. That's a really good one, actually. That's a spot on.
I'm a reasonable person. Sounds good.
These guys are a really cute duet.
I'll say it like I'd come and open myself, but my feelings would be directed in another way. Like I'd feel like my feelings were used to strengthen another argument.
That for that reason, I don't open up about my shit, because most people, when they're not gonna have any resources, they're gonna use that against you.
I mean, I had one girl I was briefly seeing, and you guys remember this video potentially, but I told her that my father wasn't in my life any longer. I didn't explain to her how, but he just wasn't in my life. And in a heated argument where she was screaming at me and I was being very quiet, at one point she said, "This is why your father walked out on you, because you're nothing in life."
That's so dirty. I don't think it's good to use like the backup, like get all the skeletons out of the closet just to emotionally dig somebody. That's not cool.
I was being very quiet. At one point she said, "This is why your father walked out on you, because you're nothing in life," not knowing that my father had passed away. And so she said that as she used my secret against me, and I was just like, oh, okay, cool. I understand what that is.
I see what kind of person.
It's a double-edged sword, because at the same time, if you want to have, really powerful relationships with people, they have to see you in sometimes the not most positive light.
Yeah.
Right.
And, I get what you're doing. You're being selective as to preserve yourself. But in order to be able to be as open and to have the best relationships with people, you have to have that kind of depth.
And sometimes I don't need to open up. Sometimes I don't need to say all my secrets. Sometimes I don't have anything to say that's like I'm just gonna say some shit. Like I have these conversations with some of my friends. Like, yeah, I said a lot of shit. Like I open up to you, but you don't never open up about me. I'm like, yo, maybe I don't need it.
Yeah.
It's not it's not a give me a secret, I give you a secret relationship.
Right.
I'm here. If you need something, I'm here.
Yeah.
But doesn't mean I have to reciprocate.
This is the straight facts. Your life expectancy decreases the less emotional outlets that you have, the less you express yourself, the less outlets you have for healthy expression of stress. In addition, your culpability in the workplace is going to decrease, especially as we have more jobs taken up by robotics, and now the only resource that humans really have left is our ability to work together and our ability to work maybe in very
actual humanity is what gives us the only upper hand.
That humans really have left is our ability to work together and our ability to work maybe in very sedentary environments on team-based projects or creative projects. And so your femininity, your vulnerability is integral to your survival in the workplace.
Okay.
And then on a third basis, it makes for a healthier relationship.
Full honesty, there's definitely a time in my life, I'd say 10 years ago, where men have shown, the partners I was with, shown vulnerability, and I thought it was funny.
Oh!
It was masculine, and for me it was a sign of weakness. Now, the more I work on myself,
So, I always feel honored if I'm dating someone or even in a friendship situation and the person trusts me with something that's dear to them. And even if it's a topic that I would feel is not quite as weighted or not quite as impactful, I will still feel very blessed and honored that you trusted me or wanted me to be the one that you shared that information with, right?
For me, it was a sign of weakness. Now, the more I work on myself, and the more that doesn't scare me so much anymore. It's actually strength, you know, because we're part of the patriarchy. We're just as active in it, you know what I mean? Like, I think, and that's it, we're just participating in that too. But then we're like, yes, there's totally the double standard.
At least she
We're like,
knows.
hey, show your emotions, and then when they do, we don't know how to deal with it.
I think it's true. I think they might be having some backlash and backfires on that, because we do want men to be more vulnerable, but at the same time, it's like, ooh, don't be too vulnerable. I don't like this, and I'm not attracted to you.
You have to acknowledge that maybe you went too far with it.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely looked at that possibility. Well, I mean, it's also hard to know what's too far.
Right.
With what person.
By whose standards?
I feel like if you're starting a sentence of like, it all began when I was 5.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Some people, I think that I can tell you this only from a standpoint of, I look at the abuse people put on me. Abuse is I don't have a better word for it.
Yeah.
But if you went through my DMs right now,
Yeah.
I literally used to have in my info box, please no DMs. Because it is just, I'm a complete stranger on the internet who's
And
not a
people are just
licensed
bombarding
therapist.
you with their nonsense.
Exactly. Not nonsense, but real problems.
Okay.
Like accounts of abuse, accounts of manipulation.
Right.
And just paragraphs on paragraphs. And I'm like, I'm a stranger.
Yeah.
And
Imagine what they're doing in a dating perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah, I feel you. I get you.
Y'all just being cheap. Go get a therapist. And if
It's
you're
expensive.
No, not with services, not a sponsored video, but like BetterHelp or Talkspace, you can choose rates. You can actually do it. You can do it by your phone. You can do it by text messaging, which is fairly cheap. But there's a lot of very accessible ways to get help in a licensed professional who is paid to and equipped to help you with your problems and issues.
I think there's a misconception that men aren't capable of being emotionally vulnerable. I think we quite are. I think those spaces, however, where we are vulnerable are reserved mostly just for men. And I think the big reason for that is that we communicate between each other in a way that's palatable and easier to digest. And I don't think that happens just along gender or sex lines. It also happens along profession, social class, education levels. Like, there are certain understandings that you will have if you have a certain shared lived experience. I was in the military before, and the way we communicate amongst military personnel is very different than the way we communicated with civilians. We would have conversations in the military that if a civilian would hear, they would find abhorrent. But you have to understand, your environment shapes you. It shapes your language. And so as a result, the way we talk may seem abhorrent to them, but because we understand what kind of environment we were raised in and shaped in, there isn't that weirdness or that kind of judgmental feel that comes from it. Their language isn't necessarily our language. The same way, the way women communicate amongst each other isn't the same way that men communicate amongst each other.
True.
So
1,000%.
I think that's why there's this perception that men aren't vulnerable. We are, just not when you guys are around.
Right.
And I've always thought
Not
it
for
odd
you.
when people said men are emotional. Actually, scientifically speaking, men are far more emotional than women. We just don't express it in the same way, and we are far more
complex.
I guess it's almost like it feels more intimate. This is just a theory, a sidebar. I think men treat their emotional sanctity the way a lot of women treat their sexual sanctity.
Okay.
Meaning, if a woman has sex too fast, oftentimes they can feel cheapened. If a man reveals his emotions too fast, oftentimes he'll feel like he cheapened them.
I love that. That is like probably the most accurate comparison.
Himself. And so I've had times where I've shared before I was ready, and I almost felt like I hoard myself out. And so when you aren't ready to go to that place and you're pressured into it, you feel cheap. And as far as the solution goes, I don't know what it is. I just wanted us to kind of start that discussion, to ask ourselves, do we really want men to be emotional? What does that really look like? Are we ready for it? And what are we going to lose if we encourage people to go down that? What is it going to look like for relationships, for people who say they don't want traditional gender roles but actually still live by them in a lot of ways? These are all kinds of questions that I don't have answers to, but I think we need to pose. And I think, like Preach had a really beautiful way of saying what he thought the solution was. What do you think is kind of the solutions to this problem?
We got to be able to talk more.
Communication.
Solution is the problem. We're having a problem opening up, but the solution is opening up on both sides. I mean, women need to open up about stuff, men need to open up about stuff without necessarily judging the other, because sometimes when women open up too much, they're being deemed as crazy. And you crazy, you
That's
crazy.
true.
No, sometimes they need to open up without being called crazy, and men need to be able to open up without being called weak. There's things that both parties are experiencing, and both parties need to let know on the other side.
And accept, like the acceptance of the other party's expression or whatever vessel they choose to express themselves in. Like, accept that shit. It's your choice on how you're going to deliver this message, you know?
Both parties are experiencing, and both parties need to let know on the other side. And you can't always call a woman crazy when she's opening up. You can't always call a man weak when he's opening up. You know what I mean? Conversation.
I think that's really well said. I don't
Very
think I
well.
can say it any better than that. Is there any other points you wanted to add about this conversation about vulnerability?
No, I don't open up much.
I love it. What a cutie. I don't like to open up much.
Piece of shit.
Right. That is.
So, to add to that, what I would say is, like, men, make sure that you have different avenues to talk about your emotions and whatever you're going through.
Right.
Not just your romantic partner, but your friends, right? Maybe a support group. I had an online forum I used to go to about my problems a lot of the time. So whatever it might be, build a network of different things that you could use. And the last thing I would say is thank you to Shan. Shan, who was down to do this project, to all the people who I interviewed who were down to open up about their experience. A big thank you to you guys, because I know it's not easy to admit when you were wrong or when you engaged in behavior that you think is problematic. But
Right.
because we're able to talk about
At least everybody was like super honest. That's always a good sign.
this, we can encourage people to have a better understanding of themselves. So yeah, that's it for today's video. Leave your comments below. We want to know, what do you think about males' emotional vulnerability? Have there ever been a time where a man's been emotionally vulnerable with you and you reacted negatively to it? Have you, as a man, shared what you were thinking and feeling and had people recoil or encourage you? I want to have a really great discussion about that.
So I love this. Thank you guys so much for staying with me during the Do We Actually Want Vulnerable Men? I personally have a lot, like I said, of male platonic friends that I was a super tomboy, so they don't even like. I've had really complex, very in-depth, very explicit conversations with my male best friends, and I've also had boyfriends during the time who say that they don't appreciate the nature of our friendship, who said that they don't think it's normal for us to be so open with each other or talking so much about the topics, or even just as, I guess, emotionally available to each other in a platonic friendship as a male-female type situation. That's a whole different issue. Also, I've been in relationships where I've told the guy, like, I don't want you to lie to me, but I also don't need to know everything all the time right away. Like, there's things that maybe you should hang on to first. Don't lie to me and don't deceive me, don't mislead me, but also, like, there's certain things that I don't need to know at all the time, right away. So thank you guys so much for coming through. None of this would be possible without you. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
Lately, you got me going crazy. And maybe